You're tuned into RX Radio. Movement prescribed. Brought to you by Prescript.com. A personalized approach to keeping you healthy and making your best even better. Your hosts, Dr. Jordan Shallow and Dr. Jordan Ginta.
But I think it speaks more to like an overall issue of like people just hear, like people will hear things and it will just dictate the way they think until they hear the next thing that dictates the way they think. Right. And like to some degree, like I'm like somewhat a victim of that. Like you read a book and you're obviously thinking about the book because you read the book, but that's like, that forms your opinion until the next book you read. But I feel like people never have their own opinions on things. They just espouse the most recent thing. Like we talked about this before with like clients, right? Like a client will check in with you and it's like a need for validation.
Yeah.
Or like a fear of being wrong. And so it's like if they have something where they can pass the buck, where it's like, well, it's not me, I read it in a book, right? Like, or you know, my coach said it was okay, or this person said that this post was right. And I think a lot of that is just like abdication of like responsibility.
Yeah, and in some ways, like, and obviously, like, I would hope that people that I coach listen to this fucking podcast and the nonsense I say. So I'm just gonna say that all of you at some point in time have probably asked me this question, amongst everybody else who asked me this question, is when people send you posts and underneath it just says thoughts ?
Oh, dude, you want me to go to my DMs right now? That and my knee hurts. Those are my DMs. It's not. Everyone thinks DMs is this magical world of just women that are just like, I don't understand whose Instagram account. Because I think my Instagram account is broken.
It must be.
Because everyone's just like, oh, dude, your DMs. Like my DMs are like, it's literally just solicitation.
I'll tell you what it is. It's guys who look like me going thoughts ? And usually videos of them.
Right.
I have no thoughts. I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to think about anything. Right. And this is just me being blatantly honest. Because half the information that I read is just a guy telling you something that exists, so it's there. Yeah. It's like our thing about, like, intention-based programming. Like, don't put a name on something that's right. Like, if you're doing it right, just continue on.
Right.
Excellent. Keep going. Like, some guy puts a post up, and he's like, cardio is important. Heart rate.
Thanks
it's
so
like,
much.
fucking yeah, man. All right. Continue on. I don't know.
The biggest issue is, and this is where like I think the environment plays a huge role. Me and you are in a situation where we can, I was talking with someone this the other day. I'm never in trouble.
Yeah.
There's not a situation in my life where I don't have the ability to be in trouble. Like, yeah, a speeding ticket, whatever. Yeah. But other than that, like, I can't, like, I don't have a boss. I don't have anyone, like, I really have to, like, look after, like, you know, be beholden to. So I can never be in trouble. Yeah. Because it's like when people talk to you, like, and, you know, they have this, like, thoughts, I'm reminded of interacting with children. But the biggest fear of a child, this is like a Louis C.K. joke, about, like, it's about getting in trouble. But when you're adult, like for the most part, especially like the way we live, like you can't get in trouble. You can do whatever the fuck we want. Like we don't have a boss.
Yeah.
So I think on a lot of times when we have clients who are in like a rigid system of like maybe a commercial gym or even a team structure, right? Like a lot of S&C coaches listen to what we say. A lot of that gets lost in the noise is like, look, I can say things because I don't have to fear any consequence of what I say because there is no consequence of what I say. I don't have to oppose an opinion.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I always say this to you, right? It's like I don't lose arguments because I don't have arguments I can't win.
Yeah.
I just don't respond. I just leave you unread. If I'm not going to win it, I'm just going to move along.
Well, and it's just
like that's why doors close and phones hang up.
Right.
Like, have you ever been in an argument you can't win? You hang up or you close the door.
I guess.
Like that's why both those things do what they do.
Right.
I can just leave. And the greatest place to leave is the internet. It's like, I don't know, just disappear, smoke bomb, I'm out.
But that's the thing, man. People like have a hard time dissociating like their, and maybe dissociating is the wrong word, but like the online avatar is as valuable to people as their own. Because I think their own life is maybe relatively devalued and they create this like heightened sense of value to the opinions of people on the internet as a means of projecting their lack of values that they have in real life.
Yeah, let's just set the bar low. Like, I'm a carpenter.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's the same thing like we were talking about. Like, the weed guy doesn't sell coke.
Yeah.
If you go to the weed guy and he doesn't have coke, you're not upset.
Yeah.
If you go to the coke guy, he doesn't have weed, you're kind of confused. Like, don't you have everything? You're the coke guy.
Yeah, you've made it to this level.
Yeah.
How do you not have like that's step one?
Exactly.
Sell weed.
How do you not know what the foot does, right?
Right.
And that's kind of the thing. And I think too, it's like, I think we're constantly, I reach out to you with questions just like people reach out to me. Like, I'm no less guilty of being like, hey, let me yell this at you and you tell me what you think. And I guess to some degree that's me going, thoughts?
But the difference is you're not sharing someone else's post.
Yeah.
Right? You're not like you're pushing like an outer, like you're trying to think abstractly about things that are already considered to be known.
Very abstract.
Very abstractly, right? You look like an urban bear hunter. Why are you wearing an orange sweater? Although this doesn't help. This is not a good. This is the most Canadian podcast setup.
I know. It's like one of us is trying to let the other one know not to shoot the other one.
Right, exactly. I think I'm going to be, what's his name? I'm going to be Dick Cheney.
I was just going to say, this is Dick Cheney's worst nightmare.
But yeah, like I just think a lot of people's uncertainty is born out of their environment, right? They know where they are in some sort of overall pecking order. And it's like I think the first step in actually creating validation around the thought process that you have and the experience that you have, because people have done things for a certain like length of time. Like if I've done something and I know it works, I don't give a fuck about anyone's opinion on it. Like I don't care. Like if I do something like clinical that like, when I see X, Y, or Z, I do 1, 2, and 3. And someone goes, oh, well, I do that. Like, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. I'll never go, oh, hey, what do you think? Like when I do this like shoulder, whatever, what do you think? It's like I don't care. Right. But I think some people are just because they're locked into this like structured tiered system and they know that there's someone above them, like someone they have to report to.
And I think too, like, it's funny. I find, especially in fitness, I think because it's ever evolving, and I think we're existing in a time in where fitness is kind of like retelling its own origin story with Instagram, is we've turned into like information survivalists. Like humans have this nature of hoarding things, but without ever knowing what the fuck they're going to do with them. Like you ever watch like Extreme Couponers?
What? No.
So I'm
How
like,
do you have the time to watch and read all the shit you watch and read?
I wake up at 3:30 a.m. and I have no boss and do whatever I want all day. Okay. So like Extreme Couponers, it's like these people get these coupons, and like if you buy 17 bars of soap, you get 18 bars of soap for free. Well, then they just have a basement full of soap, and they don't shower. So it's like, you've got all this soap, but what was the point of having the soap? That's with the people with information. They're survivalists. It's like, I need to gain all information present to me at any time, but it's not contextual. It's like people think absorbing information and absorbing content, they're going to reap the benefit of it later on when they come to a position when they need it. But it's like, since all of this is so organic and almost philosophical in nature, and like there are base concepts and objective measures in which we all kind of agree upon, it's like nothing's wrong until it's wrong.
Right.
Like you don't need to know that yet. And so many conversations I have, I'm like, what is the point though?
Yeah.
Like what's the point of this question? Like what are you going to do with it? And that's why I don't like small talk. I fucking hate small talk. It's not contextual. Like why do you need to know this about me?
It's almost like, have you ever heard the theory of why we yawn?
Yeah.
It's like there's my brain perceives that your brain is getting more oxygen and my brain goes, oh fuck, like what's going on here?
Yeah, there's not enough oxygen in this room.
Yeah, I need to get some too. But it's like there's plenty, and what I'm sitting on the couch, what do you need more oxygen for?
Exactly.
Right? It's like, why do you need like the 36 bars of soap if you don't shower?
Yeah, and that's just this information survivalism where we're like, I need to hoard it all. I need to collect it. I need to understand. It's funny, I need to understand the information, but not the context or the goal in which the information exists in.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need to know anything about running marathons. And if I ever did, I could go find that information.
Right.
But right now, like, why am I using storage for that?
Yeah.
But people want to. I just need to get it. I need to get it before the next guy has it.
Yeah.
So I can post about it so someone can see my archive post where I mentioned HRV 6 months ago. And it's like, great. Who cares? And like, I think it comes from a point too. It's, I don't need anything I can't monetize, to be quite frank. Like, I'm not in the business of philanthropy. I'm in the business of making money. If I can't monetize it, I don't need it. I have an apartment in which I'm going to sell my couch because I don't need it. Because I sit at my island. Like, I don't need a couch.
And that's like kind of metaphorical to information. Like, I don't need to go seek out information and post about it just to have a placeholder on the internet to say that I have a comprehension about this subject, even though, or more often than not, it's not going to actually give me like yield a return. Yeah,
it's like back when like currency and like actual like paper money was sparse and things were bartered and traded for, people amassed quantities of material goods in which to display wealth. It was a display of wealth, right? Well, it's like it's people with information now. Like when you walk into my condo, every book that's on the wall I've already read. Yeah. I just now have them, and I don't have any furniture I don't use. And if plates didn't come in packs before, I'd have one plate, one glass, and one fork. It's because that's all I need. Like it's like the metaphor for my own brain. It's like everything here I use all the time, and if I don't use it, I'm trying to get rid of it.
We look at things not as objects, but as functions.
Correct.
Right? And I think that's people understand that the hoarding of information goes away. The hoarding of everything goes away because it's like, what is its function? Not what is it like? What is the object itself? Right? Like the stump in the chair. Right? Like I can sit on a stump, I can sit on a chair because we look at it based off function. We don't look off based off object. Right? Like we kind of talked about this before. Is like. I wouldn't, if I looked at things based off objects, I'm like, that is part of a tree. I don't think I think tree leaves and oxygen, whatever. I don't think furniture.
Yeah, like I don't think when the sun and the moon and the earth all hit this one spot in orbit, I'm going to sit on a chopped up tree and eat a chopped up dead animal and sit across another person who's just skin and bones.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to go have dinner.
Yeah. It's not
the
like
function. It's not.
But and I think a bigger question to that is like, what is the function of social media, right? Yeah. Like we see it from an objective standpoint, like, or maybe not objective, but like we look at it as an object, but we don't necessarily understand that object's function. And for like people online in the fitness space, what is your function? And I think when you look at it that way, your statement about like I don't do anything that I can't monetize, or I don't like need to acquire anything I can't monetize, that becomes less like of a, an aggressive or blunt statement if you look at social media as from a function stage rather than an like, I don't want to say objective because that's not necessarily the right term, but like if don't look at the social media as an object, look at it at its like as a function.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that becomes like a very like, oh yeah, because of course, why would I do anything if the function in the fitness space is to, make a living? Then that's exactly how it should be treated.
It's funny because like me and my best friend growing up, Trevor, who's probably going to listen to this. It doesn't work out, but he'll listen. We always said like when we were growing up, we used to listen to like a lot of hardcore music, and we're like, man, wouldn't it be dope to rent a storefront in the mall and just put like a stereo in the corner and just listen to hardcore music all day and hang out at the mall? Because that's what we did anyways.
Right.
We're like, why don't we just rent a storefront and just hang out there? But this is the idea of like having a social media account that you can't monetize. Like we're going to lease a space in a public domain in which we're just going to hang out. And that's what most people are doing. Like there's no call to action. So people are leasing a space in the social media domain in which everyone can see you every moment of the day. But it's like, what do they do with it?
Well, the problem is like when you make the comparison to the, I don't know, between the Buried and Me fucking storefront with the fender hooked up to your iPod, right? Like that seems irrational to everyone listening because the currency that you'd have to exchange and the return on the investment is obviously calculable with money, right? With currency. But what people don't realize that's like more, I don't want to say maybe more egregious, but like more important is with social media, it's like, there's not an exchange of money. Anyone can log on and create an Instagram account. And then there's monetary exchanges that happen past that. But people don't realize that what they're investing and what they're getting back and what they're losing on that negative return investment. Because, the comparison being made, you open up the Between the Buried and Me storefront, you sit there and just fucking, maybe two-step your way through the fucking food court. And that seems so silly to people because, like, well, you're not selling a product, right? You're not making money, but yet you're giving money away. And then people look at social media and they go and they acquire all this obscure knowledge and they do all this stuff, but they don't realize that it's, as I would say, 10 times worse, more of an offense you're investing in a negative return in time.
Yes.
And it's like, I can always go make more money.
Correct.
Right. And that's the scariest thing to me is like, that's what I really like. That's what like gnaws away at me as someone who like receives a lot of messages as yourself. Like, hey, like, what do you think of this? Thoughts? Question mark. I think it's gonna be the name of the episode.
Yeah, honestly.
Thoughts. But it's like I'm thinking you're wasting your fucking life.
Correct.
That's what I like. You take a hard look. We're in a position where, from a business standpoint, you almost have to track the efficiency of your time as it relates to money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can make $100,000 a year, but if you have to work 70 hours a week, you're not actually making that much money. Right? And that's how people don't look at social media like that. Like it's just this, it's splintered off of reality, and people start to blend the rules and they don't understand. It's like, look, man, like this is as dumb an idea of you talking about, hey, what do you think about this whatever exercise? That's as dumb of an idea, if not more so, because like you can lose the money on between the Buried in Me storefront, rock on, and you can just go make more money.
Yeah.
But the time people waste, it's like, dude, you're fucking like 25.
Yeah, it's like, so I worked in a commercial gym for years, right? And fucking trainers work, and we have so many trainers that listen to this podcast. It's like trainers work like, what, 15, 16 hours a day?
Yeah.
And they make whatever. It's like the first thing I did when I got a job as a personal trainer is I wrote at the bottom of my day planner how much money I wanted to make. I was like $1,000. I don't go home until I make $1,000. And I would just find out how quick I could make it. Yeah. And it's like, if that was training 2 clients and selling 7 people a year of training, that's exactly what I did that day. And I was like, all right, I can dip. Like for the week, I need to make 2 G's this week. I'm going to make this much money per day. And I would fill in my schedule with what I had, and I would figure out what was left each day. I'm like, okay, I need to find a way to make $200 today. All right, well, that means I got to like sell somebody training, train 2 more people, do fucking something else, sell protein powder out of my trunk, whatever it was. But it's like, I started the day with the intention of like, I go home when I make this much.
And that's the thing. Like I put up something the other day about this, about like having aim. And then that goes well with this idea of like, look, it's the idea of, we don't look at things as objects, we look at it as its function.
Correct.
And as like from a very like meta perspective, that's exactly what people are, right? Like if you think of people, like people are 2-meter bags of water. Like that's essentially what they are, right? But they're not that.
Yeah.
They're based off of the function. And it's like, we can see things in like an acuity and contrast that are like, shy of birds of prey, like we can see things way better than any other animals. Like cats can maybe like detect movement, and then dogs have like different sensory, like they can smell way better. But when it comes to like sight, and so like that has to play into your decision making process. Like you had an aim, because everyone, I hate, who's this fucking quote? I want to say it was a Helen Keller quote, but it sounds too obtuse to actually be it. Like it's on every tattoo shop ever. It's like the biggest, something about like having sight with no vision. Oh. Right. And everyone this year is like, oh, like, I'm staying on my 20/20 vision. It's like, but you don't have an aim. You're just trying to project this, like, it's like having, I think the more, and this may lend to the conversation, it's like people don't filter out like a vision is just like this thing, this goal, this dream that they have.
Well, yeah, like a vision board is a Bristol board where you cut all your favorite pictures out of 16 magazine.
Right.
Like if you want to have a vision, go do that. Get some scissors, get a glue stick, and go fuck off in the corner.
Right.
Like if you want to make money, go make money. And like that's what I don't get is like people have a vision, but like they don't have a target and they don't set like a filter system to it. Right. There's no like objective measures of subjective means. It's like before I had an online business, I had 2 online clients. Well, guess what? I still woke up when I wanted to after everybody else, and I still read for 2 hours a day. I still went to the park and chugged beers, and I filtered my day based on what I wanted to do. I filled in the gaps with what I had to do. Because it's the Peterson rule or something. It's like, I don't know, fucking give it a name. It's like if you have an hour to do something, you'll do it in an hour. If you have 3 hours to do something, you'll still do it in 3 hours. So it's like, why would I go into a day just in a controlled fall into my bed, hoping I get things done, when it's like, no, like life's about living. I'm going to put into my day what I want, and I'll find out what I need on the first of the month when I got to pay rent. So It's like, I'd rather filter in what I want out of life and then fill in the gaps with what I need to do. And I think it's the same with programming. Like when you write a program or you buy a $25 program or you buy coaching, you go in with what you want, not what you need. You never messaged a coach and been like, I really think I need, some foot strength and I'd really need to work on some, external rotation at my shoulder. You're like, no, I want a 300-pound bench and I want to wheel biddies at the bar.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, let me figure out what you need. It's like you filtered in what you wanted and we filled in the gaps with what you needed. Yeah. So it's like, take the same approach to your business, to your life.
But I think the hard part with business that you kind of like alluded to is that in having like we talk about aim and calibration, like you talk about calibration a lot, and that first of the month for you is calibration.
Yeah.
Right. Just like if I'm to like aim at a target, like we can have vision, we can see, that's great, but I actually need to focus on a target. I don't just walk around like fucking Nick Cage and Weatherman with a bow and arrow on my back.
No,
I have to go and zero in on something. And if I pull up and right, and this is where like function and like function and structure kind of come in. Like our body is made to act on how we perceive things, right? And this is the idea that we don't see objects, we see the function of something. So if I look at something and I shoot it and I miss, my cerebellum immediately like starts to recalibrate.
Yeah.
So that target is the first of the month.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the more accurate we get, it's more about zeroing in on the target. So the more frequently, like if I shot one arrow and then fucked off for a week and came back and shot another arrow, that calibration is off.
Yeah.
And I think people have a hard time, like even I would say for you, like you're not really giving yourself enough credit in this context, because it's like the first of the month isn't how you calibrate.
No.
You're constantly calibrating and recalibrating, right? But I think a lot of people they stay on the needle of the paycheck, right? So they don't ever get brought to a point where like they're not shooting at a target. They're just shooting out in the air. They have no visual feedback in which to recalibrate their aim, right? So it's like, with the money, I do the same thing with even like, I don't want to say even now, but like if I book a flight, I'll take the cost of the flight and I'll say, I want to make this money before I land.
100%.
Right. So I'm doing 13-hour hauls like over the Atlantic, and like those are not cheap flights. Like sometimes I'm like, I can't fucking believe like this is how much like it costs from get to point A to point B. But I will sit there and I will not go to sleep. I will crack an Adderall. Everyone else in the cabin is in their fucking PJs, horizontal, 36,000 feet going to sleep. And I'm burning fucking retinas on meth in the middle of the airplane thinking, oh shit, I have 6 hours left. I need to write like 2 more chapters, or I need to put together like a CRM, like automated marketing, email marketing campaign or something like that. Right. Because that's, I have we have like quarterly goals financially, or we have, sales goals we want to hit, like number of students we want to sell, or number of, modules or manuals we want to write. But it's like the closer, if I sit and shoot at the target and I keep firing arrows and I keep recalibrating, my accuracy is going to improve, right? But it's the distance between the peaks of the wave's length that has to be short enough for that calibration to actually take place.
Yeah.
So I think that's where people just struggle. Like they wake up every day and maybe their calibration is the first of the month. Right, but like I know you, like your calibration is every conversation you have. Like I watch, I watch you, you watch me. Like I watch you like navigate situations. Like we went from having lunch with Greg Zahn on 1 hour, and then you were talking to someone about her 16-year-old son, right? And but you're constantly calibrating, recalibrating. Like you say a word, and you watch, see like, all right, where's my boundary? Am I near the bullseye? Am I shying away from it? And you change like, your body position, you change, like you mirror some of the way like they're standing, like you use your hands more, you use your hands less. Like if it's a bigger person, your hands are out more. If it's like this small lady talking about her 16-year-old, one of your hands in your pocket, right? Like people just, they don't know how to aim, and more importantly from that, if they do, they don't know how to recalibrate.
It's funny, and I think I think you give me too much credit sometimes too. Like who knows what I'm doing? I got an orange fucking sweater on.
Yeah, but it's intuitive though. Like, and that's the art of it.
It is, and I think too, it's like I was telling you about that Tim Kennedy. Like he was on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and like man, that guy fucking fires me up. And he was talking about how like from his history and experience in the military, and like having to go into these really stressful, hostile areas, like the thing about the discipline in the military that he spoke to was it allows you to create so many commonalities that aberrances are apparent. So it's like when he walks into a neighborhood in Houston, right away he knows like the demographic split. How many white people, how many black people, how many Hispanics, how many Asians, the age group, what cars they drive, how much money they have average in their bank account, right? Where security cameras are in a Walmart. So it's the minute you see something out of place, he clicks in right away and goes, that doesn't make sense, right? And that's from like walking in through a market in Baghdad, right? You gotta know who has the Uzi under, his picnic blanket. So it's like, fuck. But anyways, and it's like, I think from that is you can adopt that to business, you can adopt that to training, right? It's like, how many filters can I apply? Like if I want to look for the perfect couch, I'm going to set the price, the material, the color, how many cushions it has. Does it have a cup holder? You know what I mean? Does it have wood? Does it not have wood? I'm going to set if it comes in 2 days. I'm going to set if I have to wait 6 months for it. At the end of the day, they're still going to show you 6 couches and you're going to have to pick. But I've zoned in so much, the noise is gone. And now I'm picking out very specific details from something. And like you can use that in the gym, right? If I create so many objective structures or so many constraints to an environment in which I can then act subjectively within a controlled means, it's this. You can do the same thing with your business, right? It's like I plot out when I eat breakfast, I plot when I eat lunch, I plot when I eat dinner, I plot when I read, I plot when I go to the gym. The noise is gone. There's no stress to that. That will get done. It's like now I have an hour to gain as many clients as possible. Perfect. Now I have an hour on the computer. Like I only do computer things during computer time. Like I don't check my phone. The TV's not on. I do all things that are related to the computer during computer time. I do all phone things during phone time.
The biggest issue people have is they don't and I'm not to go like straight Jocko with it, but like you are able to do that because you're scheduled and regimented.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where people like you joke around and get up whenever I want, but it's like you get up whenever you want, but sometimes you get up when you have to, and that's at 3 a.m. to talk to Daff.
Yeah.
Right. And like it's we live pretty free, like we do whatever the fuck we want, which is like off because why we dress like this and talk on a podcast at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. But it's like that to have that sort of freedom to do whatever you want comes from the structure of having everything laid out and adhering to that structure.
Yeah, like anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, right? Like I love Kierkegaard, and it's the idea of like if you jump into a bottomless pit, it's going to fucking suck. If you jump and you know where the bottom is, it's like you can kind of calibrate when it's going to suck. So it's like the more controls I can set in place, it's like the greater the resolution of the bottom of this hole that is freedom is. And it's like I can then calibrate for, like when it's going to suck and when it's not going to suck. And I think that's the thing is I don't allow myself the anxiety of having complete freedom. I allow myself the freedom of having the things I want at the times I need to have them.
Well, I just think there's like, people see that it's like, dude, I forget. I think it's a Chris Hitchens quote. Like you get to choose your regrets.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of people would rather have their regrets chosen for them. Right. And this is like the idea of you're going to have that structure. Like someone might look at you and be like, oh man, like, and you have it blocked off from 7:15 to 8:15. Like that's when you're on the computer and then you do this. Like that's so boring. It's like, are you fucking serious? Like, what are we going to do today? Like, we're going to do this. Like, we're going to go to the gym. We're going to go out for dinner, like, later with some MD from Toronto. Like, that's like, at a certain point, like, everyone's kind of like, oh, yeah, you should be happy. And, we went off about self-care and all this stuff. Yeah. It's like, and, like, spontaneity, like, oh, like, you got to be free. It's like, if you operate without aim, you are the most enslaved person in the world.
100%.
Right? Like, that enslaved is obviously like, so that's contextual based off the conversation we're having. So please don't get at me about that. But like, if you want to be this like namaste, like, no, like, don't mess with my vibe. It's like, dude, like, you have to do shit you don't want to do, but it's going to be disproportionate more favorable. Because even when I'm doing stuff I don't want to do, like I get to decide. Yeah. Like rather than like, going to work from 9 to 5 and then from 5:01 to midnight, it's like, oh, like, I just like to do whatever I want and go with the flow. It's like you're wasting fucking time. Yeah. And people just don't realize that, like, especially in the personal training field where you're making someone else's money. Like if you want a commercial gym structure, like we've all had someone else's hand in our pocket at a certain point, right? Like, gym franchises, depending on the model, either you're going to charge you rent or you're going to work for them and you make X an hour. And it's like, people I think are afraid to step out because they don't have an aim, right? Yeah. When like with you, with like every day, okay, I need to make a fucking G note today. Yeah. All right, sweet. People just have no idea.
It's just like, you could best practices, like winning behaviors and best practices are best applied to everything you do, right? Pretty sure Michael Jordan played basketball the way he runs the Jordan brand, the way he owns the Charlotte team. It's like best practices are applied globally to everything. And if you're gonna apply this level of specificity and adherence and like this anal retentive need to collect information and be right and do everything, it's like at the same time your bank account better fucking reflect that you do that or else you fucked up. So it's like, and that's the thing. I don't read my contemporaries unless they're my friend. I know what you do because we talk on a daily basis. I literally have no idea what anyone else does in fitness. Don't ask me about them. I probably don't follow them.
Thoughts?
I probably don't know who they are. I have no concept because it's like I'm existing in space at the same time everyone else is. So we're all privy to the same things. And it's like if I need it, I'll go find it. I don't need to hear what some other guy who exists at the same time thinks. But also it's unnecessary. It's like, am I helping my people? Continue on.
Right.
Are your people happy? Keep going.
It's like, it's the physical manifestation of this would be people that hoarded toilet paper when things like you don't need it.
Yeah.
Like if you need it, you can go find it.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. There's such a, like a dependency. I think people like being on the needle, right? Because it takes away the responsibility of them. If anything goes wrong, it falls on their shoulders.
But it's like, that's the same thing as working in a commercial gym versus like doing this on your own, right? It's like to be on the needle is to be on the back foot of the person in front of you.
Right.
It's like the person above me has to do well in order for me to do well. I have to follow a guy and regurgitate what he says in order to sound smart. Well, he already fucking said it. So you don't need to say it now.
Yeah.
Like there doesn't need to be three people saying the same thing.
And it's funny because you take like the thought process from business and you look at the way these trainers or coaches or even therapists, I mean, I can speak more to the therapy route. It's probably equally as egregious of an offender when it comes to this kind of behavior, is that the fact that they are on the heel of someone above them, like it means that they're just constantly clinging to objective data, right? And we talked about the training economics and all that a few weeks ago, but it's like at a certain point, the way you discern is through quality, right? Like we can take two cars and we can have them go the same speed, but one is going to be more valuable to someone because of the quality behind it, right? And I think that's what people are like the people who are in those positions where they are sort of on the needle, right, are the same people who are chasing he's at 110 degrees of knee flexion, and it's like, dude, this is your whole problem.
Is that 1.2 meters a second velocity?
Right.
It's like I don't fucking know. Did it hit the target or did it not hit the target? I wasn't even I'm not looking at the radar gun.
Yeah.
I'm looking at whether the ball touches the bat or touches the catcher's mitt.
Right. But I think it's in business, the people who are part of this subjugation model and needing of approval in their training, it's the same thing. That's why they come to you. Every person who comes to me and goes, thoughts, ? It's just, that's the same person who is in a structured system in their work. It's like, don't come to me for this, right? Like get your own response, like be able to assess for quality, right? Because everyone is so uncertain of their ability to, assess and create a standard of quality of movement, that they just like they rely on a superior in their work to tell them what to do, or someone on Instagram to tell them that they're right. They look at objective data only to tell them that they're good at what they do. It's like I don't need to see meters per second. Like velocity-based training is actually a really good example of this because it is so objective, right? But like you said, it's like did it hit the target? Right? And this kind of comes back to our idea of aim. Like if your aim is to throw faster, right? We seem to be inextricably linked with baseball, you especially. And it's like if your goal aim is to throw faster, it's like, but if you throw it into the dirt, right? And it's an end game, right? Like you're just throwing balls all day and everyone's just going to walk all over the bases. So I think that's what people do. Like they don't have like a qualitative criteria, right? They don't have the confidence in themselves to create a qualitative criteria to aim at, right? They don't know how to recalibrate for quality, so they just recalibrate for quantity, right? And it's like, well, the idea of we coach people and we program computers, right? And everyone's writing programming and no one's doing coaching. Everyone's focusing on quantity and they're not focusing on quality, right? Like everyone just has this this subjugation of like to authority and this what would you call it, like a need for validation that just like, look, even if it's not the best, at least it's something that I can push up. Well, they threw this much, man. Like they threw this fast, or they benched this much, so we're good. It's like, yeah, but that's not sustainable. Like look at that. Look at the technique of the bench press. Like that's going to break down.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, if they spent more time on quality, they would have more quality time. Like we can afford to do this because the rest of our day is structured. Because you were up from 3 to 4 talking to Daph in the Middle East, right? Because we got to train at this time, and we got to podcast at this time and do this. Like the time in between where we can just like grab a coffee and not have to think about it. Like that's quality. But people they don't see the reciprocation between time and quality, right? They just always focus on the objective and not the subjective.
And I think too, it's like we can just like look at quantity and quality in very much ways. Like I always find quantitative measures are the filter, right? And it's like the greater I can filter things down, it's like the better I understand the quality I can express. It's like if I've set all these filters to what someone can or cannot do in a quantitative sense, how many degrees of knee flexion, how many degrees of hip extension, how fast they can move, how slow they move, how strong they are, how strong they're not. It's like, well, then I have this ability to create like a quality and an expression and a dialogue between those 2 points of like, well, now my vocabulary is this, and now my creativity is this within the movement because I've set the targets of A to B, right? It's like, I know you can only do this. It's like somebody said to me, are you annoyed when you have to coach people during COVID because they don't have a lot of equipment? It's like, no, it's really more of a test of, do I know what the fuck I'm doing? Because if you go to Pure Muscle and you have every machine on the planet, I could just say anything every day and it would always be right. If you have 2 kettlebells, a band, and a broom handle, I really have to understand how the body works in order to create this expansive vocabulary. So it's like having these quantitative, like objective measures to create subjective means of the result, right? It's like I get to be more creative the more I understand the rest of the picture, right? Like it's easier to be really good at coloring something in if the lines are already there.
Right. Like the border of the frame will make for a better picture. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I just have to like paint by numbers, I become really good at painting.
Yeah.
But if I also have to paint the border, like again, I'm spending money, right? I spent money on having to draw the outline myself, and then I get to the shading, and now I'm tired, and now I just want to fill it in and get done with this paint night. Yeah. But it's like, if all I have to do is color in a coloring book, well, I go fucking in because I didn't have to draw it. Yeah. So I'm like, well, now I can focus in on like, how cool can I shade this in? You know what I mean? Because the borders are there.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not like, well, I drew it and then I got to color it. It's like, all I have to do is color it in. Well, now I'm going to start like practicing shading techniques and like using different colors and blending. And I don't fucking know how art works, but
this is your idea of modality.
This is the modality in the bank account, right? Like I can express more once I understand the means of how I express. And I think when we look at fitness, we look at it, again, always from this science point of view. But when we look at artists, like artists knew the quality of the modality, therefore they expressed it differently, right? Jackson Pollock and Picasso painted 2 completely different ways, but they understood the quality of the modality they used, which was paint.
Yeah.
It's like, well, now I know how oil-based paint works, or I know how grease works, or I know how, a canvas feels. It's like I can express whatever I want to express once I understand, the objective ends of what I have at my disposal.
Right. And the best thing about them is that they never told you what they were.
Correct.
Which I love. Like I love that analogy. Like between Pollock and I don't know, Picasso or Van Gogh or something like that. Like Pollock just throws shit on a wall.
Yeah.
Like he is probably like, if you think of like abstraction art, like Pollock's it. It would look like a kid's finger painting.
Yeah.
But Pollock just did Pollock things, to kind of use your phraseology, right? And like Van Gogh just did Van Gogh things. We came in after and said this was his blue period.
Yeah.
Like we came in after and said, oh, this is whatever the
Cubism.
Yeah, or what the pointillism or whatever the fuck, right? Like all that stuff. They didn't care.
No.
Right? They just did their art. And but the first thing they did was they hung a canvas on a frame and said, okay, this is the border of the piece.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the corner of each one of their attics or houses there's a pile of shit stuff they didn't like.
Yeah.
But I think everyone's afraid to do that. It's like Picasso didn't paint a painting once. Painted a painting thousands of times.
Yeah. Well, that's like the thing with the guy comes up to him at the coffee shop and was like, hey, are you going to keep that? It's like, yeah, how much? It's like $6,000. It's like, you just drew it on a napkin. It's like, well, yeah, but this took me, like, it took you 5 minutes. Like, no, it took me my whole life.
Yeah. Did you ever know about how how Dolly started?
It's one of my favorites.
So he just started signing furniture with his name on it and selling it. He's the first guy to brand anything.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah. So he would just buy a chair at like an antique store, and he would just grab a marker and just sign his name, sell it.
Yeah, hi. Welcome to fitness.
Yeah.
How many people are doing that?
Exactly.
Like, how many people are just like putting their name on
And it's
stuff?
like people couldn't see through it in Dolly's time. People can't see through it now. It's like it's a name on something that already existed, right? It's form over function. It's like it's a chair.
How many people messaged me with the chair I'm sitting on right
Yeah,
now?
the Eames chair.
Yeah.
Some guy put his name on
I
it.
had no idea what it was. But that's all it is. It's a chair.
Yeah,
It
but this
reminds
is
me of that and whether or not it's actually a Zuckerberg quote. But like in The Social Network, the movie, the Jesse Eisenberg movie, he's sitting there like getting sued, and he goes, you know, the guy who invented a chair doesn't owe money, or people don't owe money to the guy who invented the chair, right? Like they had an idea, I had a better one. And now it's just like the differentiator is quality, right? This thing has whatever legs and a footrest. It's like you can appease that function.
Correct. The quantitative
right.
means, right?
Exactly. So it's just like, I think people get so afraid to put their name on it because I think it might come down to imposter syndrome, but they just don't have like the confidence in their ability because they have no idea where they are and what they're aiming at.
And I think some of it comes from having not done it. Like how many people send you thoughts and you're like, did you try it?
Yeah.
Did you try it? Did it make sense? Right. Did it feel good? Did it not feel good?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't try it yet.
Well, I want to
why
try it
not?
until I asked you.
Yeah. It's like, why not? Right. And I think that's very much what it is. It's like, just try it. You'll know.
Well, because people think there's a consequence to trying stuff.
There isn't. Trust me.
No, there's not.
Trust me,
There's
trouble
literally
all
like you can't get in trouble.
Yeah.
You can't. And what does trouble even mean? Like what if your boss yells at you? What does that even mean? Like, I can't do that. My boss is like a this, that, or the other. Like I talk to clinicians all the time. Like, oh, my clinic doesn't do that. It's like, well, what if you did it? Like your clinic doesn't do it because your clinic doesn't do it. But what if you did it? Well, they would get mad. And they trust me. Like they're not going to fire you.
Yeah.
If they fire you, you probably shouldn't work there anyways, which is valuable information to gain.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, I think people are so, and maybe it's just like a projection of like childhood, right? Like the more I interact with people and the older I get, and frankly, the more jaded I get with human interaction. Like, I think we were talking about this the other day. Like, is all of this, like when you meet someone with a weird quirk or like you meet someone with just like an obvious cognitive dissonance, there's like, did something happen to this kid when he was 9? Yeah. Like, did something happen to this kid that like it just forever forked a road in the path of his development that he doesn't necessarily realize how he's like just kind of this one particular feature of his personality is just different. And like it makes me think that, you know, we all have to adhere to some level of discipline. Well, not have to, but most of us do as kids, and we can't shed that. Like I've always been a pushback kid, like always, because my mom's a pushback person. Like if someone, like my dad is like super passive. I remember this guy came once to install a heater into our pool. And he was kind of like was a fireplace guy. He was an Italian dude. He was always trying to like cut a deal. Like, yeah, it's the best we can do, man. Like he would just see what he could get away with. And my dad was like totally understanding or whatever. Like just, yeah, it's all good. Like, well, yeah, it's fine. You just go have a nice day. My mom's like, fuck that. So literally like it came to the point where this dude would come to fix or give us a quote for something. And my dad would just walk to Riverside Tavern. He was like, oh, hey, man. And he would know, like, my mom was just like, go grab a beer. I'll take care of this. Yeah. My mom just grabbed him by the ear, like, listen, you son of a bitch. Yeah. Like, this is how this works. And I looked at that, I'm like, okay, and that's how I operated. Like,
yeah, it's honestly hilarious because we're such good friends and our parents are exactly the same. Yeah. Like, my dad's like, yeah, whatever, I'll pay you more. Yeah. Pay you more to do it.
Sure.
And my mom's like, that's it, we're out of here. Get the fuck out of my house.
Yeah. But I think people, I don't know, like, I don't want to say, yeah, my parents had my back. Like if I came home, I remember I did a project in the 7th grade with my buddy Shane Butner. Shout out Shane Butner. And we shot it on some shitty camera. Like, we were both kind of, parents didn't have a ton of money. Some kids had like, at the time, 720 maybe was resolution. I think mine was actually on a VHS. Yeah. Like a big fucking, I was basically coming over the shoulder with it. And we're competitive kids, and we ended up getting a really good grade, but the quality was shit. But the video production was poor, but the actual content was pretty good. And I like threw it in this chick's face because she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get a 4+ on it or whatever." And I was like, "What'd you get? Like 3+?" Like, "Yeah, I got a 4." And I just threw it in her face so much she cried. And her parent, it was Callie DeColt. Her mom called the principal, and I had to sit down in front of Mr. Walls and explain why I was like bullying this girl. I was like, and my mom came in and she's like, "But no, like I don't get it. What did Callie get? She got a 3+, right? He got a 4+. What's the issue?" And it's like fucking high five. Good job. Keep kicking ass. And now it's like, as a 30-year-old man, it's like, well, I know mom's got my back. As long as the cops don't come, do whatever the fuck you want. Do literally whatever the fuck you want.
It's crazy because I think it's funny. Like the whole time you were talking, I was just thinking of what I wanted to say next. No, I'm kidding. But no, in a way, it's funny because you mentioned like what happened during childhood that makes you this way as an adult. And I think it's like when we were kids, all of us were like, just wait till I'm fucking older and then I get to do this, right? When I'm an adult, I'll stay up all night long. When I'm an adult, I can eat all the candy I want. But then we create these rate limiters, always based on society, right? It's like other kids had 720 cameras. Like you obviously did what you did, but other kids would be like, oh, their camera's 720. Like, fuck it. I have a shit camera. It's going to be what it is, right? It's like when I'm older, I'm going to have, I'm going to stay up all night long. We get older and we're like, oh, I got to work tomorrow, so I should get to bed. Or it's like, oh, candy's bad for you. I shouldn't eat all the candy I want. I shouldn't buy these shoes because it's not responsible. But it's like, man, like everybody just waited till they were older to do something, and then they found a way to rate limit themselves later on, and we see that in fitness. It's like, dude, it's the fucking internet. It's the Wild West. Yeah. Like if you want to take your shirt off, crank trend, do the splits, and spin around in your head, like the fucking internet is your playground. Do whatever the fuck you want. But we create these rate limiters. Oh, you can't do that. Somebody said you can't do it. Fuck it, man. You're an adult. Do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, I think, and that's
the consequence is only ever the cops, just so you know.
That's it.
Don't break the law. Do whatever the fuck you want in between.
As long as it's not like, St. Peter at the pearly gates or a jury of 12.
Yeah.
If that's not at the end of your decision-making process, do literally whatever the fuck you want.
Again, man, at the end, we all meet our own maker. You decide who it is. Like, you'll answer to it then. Fucking just wait for it.
And it's just, I think people like the idea of making complexity out of nothing, making things matter, because things that they don't know what matters to them, right? Like my buddy Hayden put up this thing like, I don't know, 5-6 months ago. And it was a quote from something I didn't pay attention, but I'm just going to quote it to Hayden Bowe. And it was like, don't spend 5 minutes on something that won't matter in 5 years.
Yeah.
Right? I was having a conversation with someone yesterday. It's actually still ongoing. And we were talking about success and like what defines success. And she was kind of saying that she had this existential crisis in like career, and she wanted to go out and do her own thing and all this, and very much to like in tune with the conversation we're having now. And I was like, yeah, I think we're around the same age. And she was like, oh, I think I'm having a quarter life crisis. I'm like, I think I'm having a midlife crisis, because if I make it to 60, it'll be a good run.
Yeah.
And she's just like, she's like, well, a midlife crisis is usually like defined by, like making impulsive and spontaneous decisions, like more often with money. And I just like looked around my place and I was just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if that impulsion and compulsion, I think could be seen as decisiveness.
Correct.
Right? Like I bought this couch. I walked into like a furniture store. And within 5 minutes, I walked out with a couch and a bed. And I saw people in there for hours. Yeah. I didn't even sit on my mattress first, because it doesn't fucking matter. I've been sleeping on 27 different mattresses a year for like 2 or 3 years. Like I don't matter. Will it matter in 5 years? No. Then all right, cool. Right. And I think some people look at that as spontaneous and out of control. It's like, no, I'm so in control that it does not matter. Right. Like what is the consequence of getting that wrong? Hey, I don't like this. Come pick it up and bring me a new one. Yeah.
And I think it's like, we talked about this like a couple days ago, where I was saying like, life should not be the purgatory between birth and death. Like you should not just be meandering until the end.
Right.
And that's half the time what people do. It's just like, do it. Money's temporal. Go make more.
Yeah.
You don't make enough? Wait a little longer. I just don't get it at the end of the day why we would sit there and play the should I game. Again, like I think there's basic human principles that we all understand. Like I don't need a book to know what's right and wrong. Just don't do those things.
Yeah.
And anything outside of those, go nuts. And same thing comes down to exercise, man. Like I know what hurts people. I know what doesn't hurt people. I set the parameters. In the middle, let's have fun. Let's figure it out. Let's experiment. Like you're a body. I'm a body. We know what the body does. Let's not touch each other inappropriately, but let's do things in between that are creative. And like maybe it expands what we know, and maybe it doesn't, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. But like, time exists. I thought about this yesterday. Like, time exists with or without us.
Right.
Like, I could sit on this couch for 50 years. It'd be 50 years from now. I chose not to move.
Yeah.
Time moved.
Yeah, time is always the x-axis.
And that's the thing, right? And that's what you always talk about. Like, time's always the x-axis. It goes on forever. And that's what I think, too. It's like, I was just sitting at my place yesterday. And I was like, I could effectively not do anything at all. Like, I could literally do nothing when I was home yesterday. But I was like, it's still going to be tomorrow when it's tomorrow. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to exercise. It's like, you got 3 months, you got 6 months, you got 9 months, you got a year. Just do whatever you want in between, man. It's going to be a year when it's going to be a year. Move, sit there, try something, don't try something. Like, there should be nothing that paralyzes you.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, the thing that paralyzes people is the analysis. But I think they're trying to set quantitative and qualitative filters at the same time. It's like, no, set the quantitative filters, and then within that parameter, it's the world is your fucking oyster.
Yeah.
Like, I've been buying furniture, like, and I'm on Wayfair, and I set the filters of like, this stool height has to be this high because that's the height of my counter. But inside of that, it's like, what if I get a mustard one? You're like, what if you don't? Because that'd be dumb. Or like, I have this much square footage in my bedroom. Maybe I get this. He's like, what if you don't? But there's no consequence if we set the quantitative filters first.
Yeah.
Right? That's the quantitative filter of time. Or the quantitative filter of money. And then you can enjoy the qualitative benefits of the time that you have, right? But we see time as quantitative. It's like, no, like, time, you should qualify your time. Don't quantify your time, right? So I think if you could set your objective criteria first, then the breadth of your subjective means in which to fill that time is going to be, above reproach, without consequence. Like, that's going to be as free as you can be. Like, with exercise, right? Like, we have, you put up the floating heel drill that Schless threw out there. And I think that's what Schless does really well. Shout out Corey Schlesinger, is you understand how the body works. You understand the constraints of, like, hey, he does the microdose model of programming. I would say he probably godfathered the modern version of it. And he understands that, look, this session's going to be this long. This exercise has to exist within this particular muscle group or this particular energy system, right? These are going to be the outer limits of range of motion for these particular athletes. And then you're left with, like, 3 or 4 major movements you can use. But everything else, like, you want to unilaterally load it. You want to float the heel. You want to asymmetrically load it. You want to use a trap bar. You can put anything within that is going to work, right? It's going to fulfill the function of the exercise rather than like trying to objectify the exercise, right? Just like we said earlier, it's like, well, I can look at a stool and I can look at a stump. If I look at them objectively, one is a dead tree and one is like a piece of furniture. But if I look at them as the human organism looks at things and interprets and interacts with the world, we see things through function, right? So it's like, if I set all the criteria, I can get rid of objectivity. I can get rid of analysis.
Yeah.
And then I can actually start to be creative, right? Then I can actually start to see things through function. And then we know we'll never touch the outer borders of like this, think of it like a game of operation. It's like, you're going to be so centered based off your filtering criteria that you're never going to hit the sides. There's never going to be the buzz.
And that's the thing. Like, I think we forget that, like, exercises, in a way, like, we could almost appropriate the term like polymorphic. Like, they exist in such liquidity based on, like you said, context, not what they are, that it's like, if you set the filters for what you want it to do, it will do almost whatever you want it to do, right? Like, the front foot elevated split squat could be a driver of quad hypertrophy, could be a driver of function and stability at the hip, could be a mobility exercise if not loaded, or if loaded at the right ends, what tempo you use and to what degree you float the heel and how elevated, how not elevated it is. Unilateral, contralateral, ipsilateral, bilateral. It's like, things are so polymorphic in a way when it comes to exercise that it is about setting filters to then have a subjective lens from which to look through, like you said, to be creative and to, instill some intention. And I think when it comes down to this word intention that we use far too often, I believe it's that we set the intention with all the cards on the table. It's like, how can you? Like, you got to set the filters first. Like, I can't create an intention in something unless I first filter down to what is the most, the most specific to non-specific, the general to specific, right?
I think the subjectivity, the creativity, like the fluidity of potential adaptation of these movements, like, because I think too, especially now with don't want to call it artificial intelligence because it's not. It's like maybe machine learning or logarithmic learning at best. But I think as that field advances, like AI and like big data and all this stuff, fitness tries to go in and sample from that. One of the major issues with AI, as I'm to understand it, I lived in the Silicon Valley for 7 years, and our CTO is a fucking, he's a brainchild, is what's called a framing issue, right? A framing issue is computers can't see things in through the lens of function. They can only see things through the lens of objectivity, right? And that's the difference between a programmer and a coach, right? Is because we can begin to be creative within these search criteria, right? Like, we've been looking at ways in which to like create an algorithm in which to decide, like, you train 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, you want to do, this is your outcome, whatever. But there always has to be like that Top Gun, right? A drone can't do it if we're talking about quality. And I think we look at AI and like, oh man, like this is the future. Like, apps are just going to, fuck you. Like, an app will never, ever be able to do what a coach could do, because they won't be able to fill in that quality. They won't be able to be creative. They won't be like, we could set filters so the cows come home, right? Like, I can set filters for bar stools or fucking couches. But if I just have a couch that fulfills the dimensional criteria, and I don't think of like, well, what about the rest of the room, right? This couch is here because this floor is this color and the walls are this color, right? It's like, if I can't look at like the individual in front of me, like human beings, I think, are trying to in the fitness space, because they don't necessarily have, I don't know, maybe the skills or even the confidence to look at the room to see how this thing fits. They end up limiting themselves to the same framing issue that AI runs into. It's like that you need to see how this functions, right? You can't just see it objectively. Like, sure, and we talk about training economics, and obviously that is very quantifiable, but I think you can't miss the other side of the conversation around framing that quantity and then using like actual experience and creativity and taking responsibility over your program to then really put in some of the finer details to drive the adaptations you're looking for.
And I think, too, it's funny because, like you're saying, like apps are never going to replace coaches. And I think a big thing even comes from the client side of things is, like, no client's happy if they send you a video and they're like, how does this look? And you're like, great, period. They want to know why. We always want to know why, right? It's like, yeah, but why? Why? Why do you like me? Why don't you like me? Why did that person get the job? Why didn't I get the job? So an app, we can make this so... we can set all the algorithms, we can set all the filters, and the answer can be yes, no, like yes, back squat, no back squat, yes, good rep, no bad rep, whatever, right? Like, it can be very logical, but that's not what people want from it, right? They want to know why, and that's why report cards just aren't A+ or B+. There's that little comment section where they drag and drop things in because maybe it provides you insight into why you suck, right? And it's like, I always remember my report cards as a kid. Like, I would get good grades in everything, but I wouldn't get good grades in math because I didn't know why it mattered. I just didn't care. I was like, why do I have... This seems irrelevant and stupid to me. Like doing algebra where there were no numbers. I was like, but why? And the teacher could never explain why, so then I didn't do it. Yeah. I would just sit there and go to sleep. And on my report card, I would get some shit mark, and then the comments would reflect that. It would say I had a poor ability to communicate what I learned. Had a poor ability to do this, poor ability to do that. My parents would always go in. And they were like, all the comments in the math section say he has a poor ability to communicate, but he has 97 in English and history. And it says he's great at communicating. So, like, where's the gap? So, like, my parents want to know why. Why is this mark not the other mark? It's like, why can I lunge but I can't squat? Like, an app is never going to do that. And an objective measure of me watching you do this one thing is never going to do that. Like, I have to see the ghost in the machine, right? Like, I did an assessment on a guy yesterday, and we were just doing like standing A or sprinter pose. And he was complaining about like he can't hit depth in the squat, and he just went on and on about ankle flexibility. I was just like, just do a standing A. And like just the angle of flexion at the knee was just so obtuse. And it was like, well, intrinsically you're setting yourself up for this greater angle of hip extension, lesser angle of knee flexion. Like, even unloaded, you just don't want to fucking cock your knee back. Like, that you're never going to get there if that's what you do intrinsically unloaded, is like sit way out in front of yourself. So it's like, why don't we just do this? We just did walking lunge to sprinter pose, and we just kept closing the knee flexion angle, creating a greater dorsiflexion angle. And then we went and squatted, and he squatted ass to grass because he just never thought of it before. So it's like, I could plug that video into a computer that does mocap, and it could be like, oh, all these things are wrong biomechanically. But really, it was a conversation where I was like, can you not do that anymore, please? Yeah. Bend your knee.
And I think that's the coach's eye. That's the but that's knowing why, right? Like, I think that's such a huge reason people, especially like obviously operating in the education space, people can sometimes lose like, okay, why are we learning this? Because if a client asks me and I can go 17 points deep on it, they're in. And that without that buy-in, like anyone knows who's ever coached anyone. This is why guys who like seemingly to us and like subjectively and potentially objectively that do stuff with dumb athletes, but the athletes still get results. For whatever reason, whatever they're saying, they believe it themselves. And then once that person believes it, then they'll get whatever result they can, or at the very least, they're not going to hurt themselves. They're invested into the program and everything that comes with the program, right? And that's going to be subsequent lifestyle changes and whatever in and out of the gym. And I think that's creating buy-in by understanding. Like everyone's like, oh, like, you know, what's your why?
Simon Sinek.
Yeah, which is like whatever. I understand that, but I think to a certain point, I don't know of anyone who's ever asked that question to themselves and come up with an answer.
You know what the answer is? Why? To make money. Stop. But I'm serious, man. And like, I'm going to keep bringing this up because I'm not here to save the fucking whales. And neither is anybody on this call. Like, listen, if you downloaded Adobe whatever fucking thing and you have Instagram and you have Twitter and you have a 4K camera and you videotape yourself doing bird dog and hip airplane, your why isn't to save the world, right? Go be Batman. Put the tights on, go out at night. But you don't do that. You have an Instagram account. Your why is to make money. Your how and your what you do. Your what you do is your fitness. How you do it is on social media. Fine. You sell programming and coaching. Fine. But at the end of the day, it was to monetize it. So it's like there needs to be a call to action. You need to have a directive because you're going to burn yourself out. Just like a client's never going to achieve what they want to achieve unless they have a quantitative measure of achievement or success, or at least failure, right? It's like, why do we ask what someone's goals are? You always say this, is to clearly define what failure is. It's like, in order to have failure, I have to have success. So it's like when it comes down to why we do the 97 different exercise variations we do, and there's a gradient to movement and rate limiters and ceilings and gatekeepers, it's to create, you know, these quantitative, you know, objective measures to subjective means, right? And I think at the end of the day, it's like, why do you do what you do? Or start with why. It's like, well, I do this because I need to make a living and I want to do it this way. And then I'll fill in the gaps surrounding on how I get to the end of it. And I think, why does your client, or why does the athlete need to do this? Why does the athlete need to do anything to make a living? Right. And they're not going to make a living in 3.7 years in the NFL. They're going to make a living in 10 years in the NFL. So why do I do what I do with that athlete? So he can play for 10 years. Right. So the pitcher can actually make it onto the mound and not burn out in spring training and get Tommy John. Yeah. So it's like, at the end of the day, athlete or client, it's probably linked to some type of monetary gain.
Monetary status, wealth or status.
Yeah, wealth or status, right? And it's like, the athlete needs to make money. I need to make money. Yeah. The client needs to look better so that they make more money. Or they gave you money and they don't want to feel like they lost their money. They want to make a return on their investment, which is looking better naked. So at the end of the day, like, the why is monetary, and time is my most valuable investment.
I would look at it this way, like using the painter analogy. It's like, okay, the painter is either after wealth or status, right? No one ever says like, oh man, like this Jackson Pollock is a 3x5. No one ever takes it, oh, like, you know, this Walt Disney cell is 8.5x11. That dimensionality never comes up, right? No one ever goes, you know, this Banksy thing was, you know, 2 feet by 2 feet squared, and they shredded it. And that's what people get focused on. Like, they don't focus on like the true, what they're like. I don't think they're honest enough to be true. Like, all right, I'm the artist. What do I need? What am I after? Everyone is either after wealth or status. That's kind of like a Naval Ravikant thing. And I believe that wholeheartedly. Because the artist who's not after money is after status. Because he wants to be known as the guy who doesn't do it for the money. It's like, then you're just doing it for the guy, to be the guy who doesn't do it for the money, but you want the status that comes with that.
It's the subtle art of not giving a fuck by having an orange book that says fuck on the front.
Right,
so
exactly.
Fuck that guy. But anyways, it's like, no, but it's
that's
like,
it, man.
You're fucking so right, man. And it's like, guess what? There's no philanthropist in the world who had no money.
Right.
The greatest philanthropists are rich fucking
Bill
dudes.
Gates.
Yeah, because obviously,
he's out trying to cure COVID, not to cure COVID. He's a lot wealthy, wants status.
Yeah, it's like, if I don't have any money, the philanthropy I'm going to do is, how am I giving out free meals if I can't eat?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If I'm going to sit in the gym all day, if I'm going to sit on the internet all day and help people and, you know, give back, create content or whatever you want to say, it's like, kind of got to be safe first. You know what I mean? It's like if I want to work on higher levels of learning, I got to know the rent is paid.
Right.
And then
Frank
I can
Lucas
turn it
was
off.
giving out turkeys because he was selling the blue magic.
Yeah.
Right. That's
so it's like
exactly
this
it.
idea that we have that we can struggle and then help people.
Yeah.
You've got it all wrong. Like you're just looking at things in the most irrational way possible. Like all these trainers with $10 who are like, I'm out here to help people. Like, dude, do it in 10 years. Man, help yourself.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Help yourself.
How could you possibly help someone if you can't help yourself?
Yeah.
Right. Because you can't understand what you need.
Yeah.
Right. You're just out after what you want. And it's like, I think if you see the room as, you know, the artist, the canvas, and the picture is three different things, then all of a sudden, like, you realize that people are focusing, like, they're dissonant in the way these three characters are interacting, right? Like, the artist is either after wealth or status. That's your motivation. And yet we're sitting there focusing on the dimensions of the canvas. I think that's the thing that matters least.
Yeah.
The thing that matters least in all of this. No one's ever said, like, you know, this Picasso painting was whatever size by whatever. It's a Picasso painting. It doesn't fucking matter if it's this big or it's the size of this room.
Yeah.
I'll guarantee you the one that's, you know, sold for $500 million at a Christie's auction is probably not, it's not based off the size of the canvas.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. If you frame your life around those three characters and really focus on what is going to give you the best return as far as your attention and intention, it's not the dimension of the frame in which you're painting on. Yet everyone's sitting there with their rulers and protractors out trying to measure and manage this one detail. It's like, guys, figure out, you want to be honest with you, is it status or wealth? And I don't give a fuck if it's, I'd rather it be wealth, because status seems to me just like a means in which for people that don't accrue wealth, that let's say status is social points, social capital, right? And it's like, if you can be honest and have that conversation and be like, look, you can, as a byproduct of that, help people, but you can't help people if you don't have one of those two.
It's so true. And it's like, dude, no client wants to train with someone who has no clients.
Right.
And if you have a lot of clients, how do you not have a lot of money?
Right.
The fuck? Like, it just, that's just a weird thing to say. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to help people. I'm not really concerned about the money. Well, guess what? No one's ever going to want your help.
Yeah.
It's like, I have all the clients in the world. Everyone wants my help because I obviously help a lot of people.
Yeah.
And consequently, I make a lot of money. So it's like, it's going to happen regardless.
Right.
Like, why shy away from it? I don't get it. That'd be like going on a date with a girl and not telling her she was physically attractive because you want it to be about something else.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, you're not going to look at someone for 50 years you don't find them physically attractive.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real.
And that's
here.
identifying the motive of the artist. Is it wealth or status? That's, you know, that is fulfilling that need of that
and it's
person.
it's like, it's a sliding scale. Like, don't double down with your client and be like, hey, man, I'm here to be a billionaire, because they'd be like, dude, why don't you go into finance? Like, why are you a trainer? And like, don't go on a date with a girl and just talk about how physically attractive she is. There has to be something else there. But it's like, there is this scale of like, these are both means to an end. Like, we must slide between the structure and function of the object we sit across from.
Well, just as the same as the artist might have, you know, a sliding scale of motivation from wealth to status.
Yeah.
The size of the canvas, albeit not integral, will still be relative to the potential value, potential quality, and resolution.
Yeah, and what they used to make, what mode of art they used, right?
Yeah,
Sculpture is going to be worth more than a fucking oil painting.
Yeah.
Because they carved it out of a rock.
Exactly. And so I think it's this understanding the interplay between those three actors in the scene, right? And I think a lot of people, they just focus on one and they try and slide the scale all the way, and it just ends up being noise. And there's no signal. Like, there's a resonance to be had where you balance your pursuit of wealth and status as the artist, right? You pursue, you know, like you manipulate how much you focus on the dimension of the frame, and then, you know, the quality in which you can create resolution on that frame is like, there's a coefficient that should be equally applied. And like, some people just go all to one end and like, you know, I'm just after status, I do it for free, and I do these massive things, and it's just like fucking art attack crap where I throw stuff at a wall. It's like, okay, that's not a favorable coefficient, right? But it's like, I kind of want to make money and I kind of want to do that. It's like, okay, they don't have to be one or the other, right? It doesn't have to be a Polaroid or a fucking side of a building, and it doesn't have to be, you know, hyper detailed, you know, 5K, and it doesn't have to be a fucking, you know, pencil crayon on a napkin kind of thing. Like, there's gradations between resolution, frame, and motivation. And I think people just, if you could identify those three things as just a person, let alone like a trainer, it's like, if you can understand, like, you know, what your motivation is between wealth and status, where are you leaning in? Like, look, like, there's, like, it's okay to want to make money, right? Like, money to me is like, it is one of the only ways we can trade in recognition of hard work and value.
Yeah.
That is the leading way we do that. It's trust. It's essentially that's what currency is. It's trust. It's like it's almost like the Dumb and Dumber thing, where it's like that tell me there's anything different in that briefcase full of written IOUs. It's like, that's a Ferrari, $250K. You might want to hold on to that one. There's that. It might as well have Benjamin Franklin's face on it and just be fucking American currency, right? So I think people get afraid to be motivated by money, but it's like, I think you should be motivated potentially by what money represents and how that money can put you in more rooms with greater ability to play with dimensions of frames and quality of like your illustrations in this case. And so, yeah, I think being clear and understanding where you are on all three of these, like these three axioms that are going to kind of really set this scene, is what help people. That'll help give people aim. Yeah. And I think that's what people are missing. It's just they go in and they try and be like altruistic and they try and be like, oh, I'm not doing it for this. It's like, then you're not doing it.
And that's the thing too. It's right. If you walked, if a room had no floor, no ceiling, and no walls, if you stood in like a white room, like in the middle of the Matrix, you wouldn't know where you were. So it's like, paint the edges.
Yeah, and how do you know where you're going to go?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know.
Cream, cash rules everything around me.
Exactly. And on that note, thoughts?